Welcome, friends and family. Super excited to be back with you today on how to win friends and influence people. Casey and I are continuing to go through this course together. Obviously, people skills has never went out of style. It's always been important to be able to work well with other people. And, John Maxwell has always said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So he also would say that if a man's going for a walk and nobody's following him, well, then he's just taking a walk. And as Casey and I work together to build the Elevate community, one thing that I think we both had to do is kind of just personally shed ourselves to some old habits. I grew up, my dad was a paver and high-blooded Italian, and along with that came some foul language and pull your head out of your butt and all that kind of talk, bring me shovelfuls, not spoonfuls. So, he just talked to us any old way he wanted to. And, we were his kids and he paid us well, but that was construction. And so being in this kind of a professional atmosphere and trying to really learn how to bring out the best in people, I really do think this book has been very helpful. How about yourself, Mr. Casey?
I 100% agree. Everything, all the concepts that are in this book, uh, will do nothing but put you in a better position in life if you practice them
Hmm.
to the best of your ability. Because it is very natural to, it's very natural as humans to want to be self-serving, and that's what the kind of the kind of
Hmm.
interaction you were just,
Hmm.
it's well, what do I get out of it? What's in it for me? And that's the beauty of it is that you still get return out of it if you're practicing these things, and you get it a lot easier, and you
Right.
get it while growing influence with the people that you're doing versus we've all know those people that maybe do a lot of business in one way or the other, whatever industry it may be, but they do the business one time because nobody's going back,
Right.
because of
Yeah.
the way they were treated, and they
They're
just
like a
don't.
rip saw. Just
Right. It's like I gave you my business once, but I learned my lesson. I'll
mm,
find somebody else for the next time, and they're able
yeah.
to just continue
Yeah.
repeating that.
So good.
This will teach you how to get that business and also earn that respect at
Mm,
the same time, and get repeat business and referral business,
mm,
regardless of the profession that you may be in. So
yeah.
this will work for construction as well, hundred
Yeah.
percent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You and I, and you more so than I at this point, are training sales agents every
Mm-hmm.
day.
Right.
And being able to sell sales agents it takes skill.
Yes.
They're already probably pretty good at sales, or they wouldn't be in that position.
Right.
But being able to sell them on a skill to even become better is often a challenge.
Yes.
And how do we go about doing that? So this chapter talks about if you don't do this, you're headed for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And what Dale Carnegie is referring to here
So
is
before you get there, I'm sorry, I just cut
mhm,
you out. I just want to say, what would you think of when you heard if you heard that sentence, right? So if you're doing this, you're headed for trouble. If you don't do this, you're headed for trouble.
yeah,
Now I know you know what the answer is
yeah,
because you know
yeah,
what
yeah,
we're going
because I've
to,
read it.
but just thinking,
Yeah, if you
what?
don't do
Yeah,
this, you're
what would you
headed
think
for
that?
trouble. Like if you don't save up for a rainy day, stuff like that's probably what I'd have been thinking
Yeah,
immediately
yeah, hundred
on
percent.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely wouldn't have thought what he
right,
gave us.
right, most
Yeah,
certainly.
I
So
would have thought much bigger things in my mind.
right. So we're talking about business. Obviously, this book is people and business oriented,
Hmm.
and the name of the chapter is "If you don't do this, you're headed for trouble."
Right.
And in my mind, when you think of, okay, well, this is a people book, but it's really a business coaching book in a lot of ways. It's a sales book in a lot of
Hmm.
ways,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so I'm thinking, um, maybe if you don't keep accurate records,
Yeah.
maybe if uh you don't give your best every day.
Yep.
Maybe if you don't create a schedule,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. But it's
Yeah.
interesting. So Elijah, what
That's
what
so
does he
good.
what does he
That's
tell
so
us?
good. What a
Yeah,
good point.
yeah,
So the simplicity, and I think that is a great word for what we're talking about. The innocence and the simplicity of his answer is remembering somebody's name,
that's
being
it.
able to call somebody by their name, which is the sweetest sound to most anybody. He goes on to say,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
most certainly. It's that simple, isn't it? I mean, how often uh, do we instantly get a smile on our face and stuff when somebody that maybe we haven't seen in a long time, or maybe somebody we've only met once or twice says,
Hmm.
"Hey Elijah, how's it going?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, I haven't. I've talked to you like maybe 2 times, and that's been 6 years ago, and you still,
Remember my name.
how precious that is."
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't like our names being called. Depends on the tonality that it comes from, doesn't it?
That's true
Um,
too.
but yeah, it's so simple. If you don't remember somebody's name, how do you expect to do business? And I'm guilty of this of saying, "Hey, hey, what's your name?" And then as soon as they tell me, it's like I'll do my best to remember that, but I'm terrible with names, and it's immediately that
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
what we're doing in that instance is we're automatically telling them, "I'm not going to put forth the effort to try to remember your name, so you just
Yeah.
be prepared to tell me again next time."
It's a
Right?
place of commonality.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are not good at remembering names.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you say that, you're building a bridge in a way
Mm-hmm.
to say, yeah, I'm like that too. But okay, why be average? Why be like everybody else? How
Right.
is that going to work for us? And how do we want to reflect that to our children?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to be mindful of people's names? It upsets me to no end when I'm around people that it almost seems like they purposefully don't call people by their name.
Right.
It just almost seems rude to me.
Well, I know I've been guilty of coming up with nicknames several
Mm,
times, and there's some people that enjoy the nickname thing. They think that gives, they to them it's a feeling of individuality, and it's
mhm.
something that was given to them, and
And I
and
think a
and there
nickname's
could
fine.
be a lot
Even
of
Jesus
enduring there too.
gave Peter the
Right.
rock and,
Mm-hmm.
the sons of thunder. I
Yeah.
mean, I think nicknames are cool, but being called by your actual name is
Mm-hmm.
powerful. And, for me, like I went through a season when I first got born again, people called me Eli. My name's Elijah, but I got called Eli a lot. And then people would start to ask me, which would you prefer? And I had to actually stop and think about it. I'm like, well, Elijah. And for me, it was more about the biblical
Right.
difference between Eli, who didn't raise his sons well,
Mm-hmm.
and Elijah the prophet that called down fire from the sky. So I really appreciate my name.
Right.
And then you begin to look at and you study the value of a name. Names mean a lot.
Mm-hmm.
KC, I remember you reviewing me, taking time to review because you'd studied this I believe, in college.
Mm-hmm.
The meaning of your name, your identity, and it was, cope
Mm-hmm.
was like
To deal with things.
to deal with things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I think you are very good at.
Mm-hmm.
You are very good at coping with things. And KC, man, a handsome rock. Kenneth Cope was handsome rock when it all came down. But I just remember that. But
Mm-hmm.
um, they tell a little story in here that really stood out to me, and that may be why I said Andrew Carnegie, because Dale Carnegie was telling a story about Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was known as one of the wealthiest people that ever walked American soil, and right up there with the Rockefellers. Actually, at one time, he sold his business to the Rockefellers. But Andrew Carnegie said when he was 10 years old, he had got a mother rabbit, gave birth to several little rabbits, and he realized that he needed to feed these rabbits. Well, even at 10 years old, he began to display some great leadership qualities. And how did he get these rabbits fed? Well, he told his neighborhood friends, hey, if you go pick up some dandelions and some clovers and you come back and you feed these rabbits, then we're going to name the rabbit after you in your honor. So he would have named a rabbit
Right.
Elijah or a
Mm-hmm.
KC. And so at 10 years old, he figured that out. Well, years later, Pullman, he was competing with Pullman train cars. And
Mm-hmm.
what these were is basically trains that had places where individuals could sleep in them. And it was getting to be very popular at this time. And Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, and Mr. Pullman were really competing. So it was kind of a race to the bottom. They were lowering their prices. They were doing things that were just kind of ineffective for a business to be able to run profitable. In order to see, it was kind of a race to the bottom to see who could get the most clientele. So Mr. Carnegie thought it over, and he went and he visited with Mr. Pullman. And he sat down and he began to explain to Mr. Pullman, sir, us working together, we could go so much further. We could quit this nonsense of trying to lower our cost to compete for business. If we could just do a merger here, I think we could really do a lot better. Well, Mr. Pullman was a wise man, and believe me, he was the king of the trains with the sleeping cars. He was over it. I mean, Carnegie was playing catch up here. And so he didn't really take Mr. Carnegie all that serious. But Mr. Pullman said, perhaps, what would we call it if we were to do this merger? And Carnegie, without skipping a beat, said, well, of course, we would call it Pullman's Palace car trains,
Mhm.
and named it right after him, right off the bat. Well, what do you think Mr. Pullman, after that, decided? I think a merger would be in our best interest. So Carnegie was so smart in the fact that he knew that if he would merge with this guy and allow this guy to have the name over the door, that it would be much more profitable for him and for Mr. Pullman. And he didn't allow that ego to get in there. He
Right.
knew what was best. And he was willing to sacrifice Carnegie, who was um, super wealthy, super respected, was willing to allow another person to put their name over the door if it was what was best for the industry.
Right. Right. 100%. And that's how beautiful is that? Is just the power of a name. And what you can do with that if you're in the right mindset and you
Mm-hmm.
do it properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's, obviously with anything, there's bad, but the good that can be done just from remembering somebody's name and the smile that you can put on there. We talked last week about smiles.
Mm-hmm.
Smile you can put on somebody's face just by remembering their name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and you had mentioned with that too, having to go through the phase of what do you prefer to be called, between the
Mm-hmm.
two versions that and and growing up, I grew up by my initials,
Casey.
KC,
Mm-hmm.
and so when I got into college and things like that, people started calling me Kenneth, is because in college it's your legal name.
Right.
So on roll call and stuff, it would be Kenneth, and
Yeah.
so I eventually just kind of just if it's college me, it's Kenneth. If it's
Yeah.
outside me, it's KC. And if
Okay.
it's
Yeah. So
so,
you
I don't really, I've never really said, hey, this is what I prefer. I've just
right.
kind of, it just depends on who I'm around to what I know that I go by. I've just can become accustomed to
That's
if I'm in
funny.
this place, this is what I'm going to be called.
Yeah.
And
That's
um,
interesting. So you can find your identity through
yeah,
that.
yeah. So the only one that I have shut down, I've had a few people call me Kenny, and that
Mm.
one gets axed real quick,
Yeah.
and I don't know why, but that one I'm like, no, let's not. No, we don't do that here.
Interesting. You reminded me of when we were going over this upstairs with the team, uh, probably a month ago. Lindsay had mentioned that some of her friends, when they get close, will just call her Linz
Hmm.
as a nickname. Hey, Linz, what's up, Linz? And she said a little bit afterwards, you went by and you said, "Hey, Linz," and you were like, "Wait, I'm sorry. I don't know if I should call you that or
Right,
Lindsay." And she said, "No, no, you're close enough. You can call me Linz."
right.
So just to even get into the inner closeness with
Hmm.
people, that name is important. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like for Lindsay, she's great with Lindsay, but if you're really close, Linz is fine.
Hmm.
And but learning that, right? And asking and caring enough to ask. Like you stopped and said, wait, should I say Lindsay
Right.
after you heard the story?
Well, and again, there's so many variations, and again, there's a story in here too with a gentleman, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name, even though it's written in front of me, which tells you how much better off the person who did it actually was
Amen.
than me.
Yes.
Um, but he had a fairly difficult name, and most time when people talk to him, they would just shorten it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's easier for them. They just shorten it to whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I know it's in this chapter. But when he made the phone call to that gentleman, he called him by his full
Yeah.
legal
I
given
remember
name,
that. I remember that.
and it impressed him so much that he took the time to learn how to
Yeah.
say it. There's several times that I run across names, and I'm like, "Ma'am, can you pronounce that for me?" Like that's just
Yep.
I want to make sure. Um, we just went through a round of phone interviews.
Mm.
Going through, looking at bringing in a new team member, and in those phone interviews, when I first make contact and introduce myself, I'll call them by their name. Usually, I'll call them by their last name, Miss or Mister,
Yep.
what
Mm-hmm.
last name.
Yep.
If the last name's maybe a little difficult for me to try to figure out how it's pronounced correctly, I'll call them maybe by the first name and then ask how to pronounce it. But then I'll say, what do you prefer?
That's good.
Um,
To ask. I
you
mean, to
know,
take the time to ask that, super
yeah,
polite.
yeah.
That's very respectful.
What name would you prefer me
Mm-hmm.
address you by? And then A lot of times they'll say, my first name or,
Mm,
this. But there's a few of them that go by shortened version of their name, and they'll say, why, I prefer to go by this. Great. So I can remember that through the rest of the interview. Because I know in a personal story and of interest of mine, when I would be in those situations and I grew up by KC. I mean, I put it on all my papers. I mean, that's what I grew up by. And so college took me a little while to kind of adjust to being called Kenneth more so. And but I eventually did, just because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of classes, and I was like,
yeah.
I'm not going to keep correcting all these people. I'm just going to give in,
You
just be
decided to
what it.
give in to the
Right.
Carnegie style, didn't
Yeah.
you?
And but in that same instance, when I would be on an interview and they'd say, is this Mr. Kenneth? And I'm like, yeah, KC, KC's fine. And then they would go through the whatever it was we were doing. They kept using Kenneth. I just remember how that was like. I've already told you, like you can call me KC. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
So
They didn't listen.
right. Well,
They didn't
but
listen.
what I'm saying is I've been on that side, so
Yeah, yeah.
it's
You know
just
how I
putting
feel.
forth the effort to
Yeah,
to do that. But how simple of a concept of you're going to be headed for trouble if you can't remember somebody's name.
that is so good, man. What a blessing. And so, guys, we'll leave you with those thoughts today. We really, kind of wanted. Casey had mentioned that we've been. I think Casey went through a round of 40 applications. We're right now in the process of hiring for an OA or an operations manager. And Casey, we run some ads on Indeed. Just gave that over to Mr. Casey, and we had at least I think 40 applicants come in,
hmm Yeah,
and
that
we
was before I shut it down. They were still coming. I had to eventually just be like, yeah,
narrowed that
yeah.
down to I think three. We got four people that we're really looking at right now. But also, just so anybody out there knows, if you're ever thinking about getting your real estate license, we run a diverse system here. We run within the Elevate community, the Elevate real estate community. We run two platforms. We will run one platform, which is uh, Team, which is something that Casey and I've been working together now for about 4 years on. And what that really looks like is people that want to come in and grow in the real estate sales at a much higher level. Those folks are going through the books with us. They're getting weekly, almost daily coaching with KC and weekly accountability. I mean, these are people that are going to come out and do their first year. We'd like to see them do 24
hmm
sales, the next year 36. And they're excelling. These are, if you were looking at income, these are six-figure earners in real estate sales, and they can come in and do that their first or second, third year. We've seen it time and time again. But also, in February, we purchased a building that Lindsay and I had worked out of for over 15 years. Cry, we got an awesome opportunity to work with Mr. Cry and Lisa, his wife, and they were just wonderful people to work with. Did that for 15 years. In February, we purchased the building, rebranded as Elevate Real Estate, and so now we have a traditional brokerage where KC will have his broker's license probably by January of next year.
hmm
He's probably 85, 90% done with going through the classes now. We'll have a traditional brokerage where, people will be able to offer the training and the coaching that will really help people get off the ground instead of culturing an environment where you can just come in here and do phenomenal and maybe not even near as structured as what we do with the team because the team is very structured. It's a more of a we would say more than Navy SEALs. We've used that word before. It's tougher, but also there's a lot of people out there that are going to just do great in real estate. Maybe you already have those relationships, you've already built that career, and you're just looking for a place to come hang out, and work, where it's going to be a growth environment, a place that's going to be welcoming and warming, and give you the coaching and training that you deserve. Well, that's us. So if we can help you with either one of those two, if you're thinking about getting in a team and you want to really grow your business in 2025, me and Casey are here for you. If you're thinking just, I'd like to be in a traditional brokerage, I want to work off a good split and make a good living, but I want to have the support of a brand and a company behind me, Casey and I are going to be here for you for that too. So if we can be of any help to you, don't hesitate. Give us a call here at 931 283 2312. Thank you very much.